Yo, what up, fam? I'm gonna do this so it doesn't autofocus. Yo, what's up? This is a response to my man Sean in Australia, the land down under. Real quick, I wanted to get my podcast set up, and I got it set up. I uploaded the first episode, so I'll link to that below. And I'm also gonna link to Sean's video that he made talking about trolling and boredom, which yeah, you can check that out as well. He kind of gave his perspective. But something like my response, it's interesting because what Sean was saying is that it's not trauma that's, causing him to troll. It's boredom. And I get that. But so normally when we think of trauma, we're thinking of like PTSD, something violent that a soldier experienced, or a person, sexual violence, car accident. These are all traumatic experiences. But like, I think trauma goes beyond that. Like, what I'm going to argue here is that boredom is is also from trauma, but it's almost like I want to say it's the trauma of Sean mentioned the Western culture and Western civilization a lot, and I think Western culture just kind of has trauma built into it, in that we don't have community like we used to have. Like, just when I say we used to, I just mean like humans everywhere. And like, it's, I'll make jokes whatever about white people, but like white people, and this means different things all over. I'm American, so it means something specific to me. But when I think of white or westernized people, they've been living in, and I'm not hating on any kind of religion or Christianity or whatever. I suppose I could hate on that, but they, like, there's been this like disconnect. It's interesting. Religion can be very communal. There's a community there. You go there every Sunday. But I mean, humans evolved in tribes, like, right? We evolved as groups of people, families and extended families and other tribe members, and we all worked together as a unit. And I don't like to romanticize like tribal times, like that was amazing. I'm not saying that was amazing. It's pretty awesome, me, having a mic and a podcast unit and a phone and all this. But like, as things have gotten modernized, we've lost a connection to something that's like very primal to our nature. And I think that's even if you haven't experienced, it's funny, Sean kind of mentions this, but I even think like people who come from a position of privilege, he mentioned some of his privileges in there, not just the privileges of being white, but like privileges when you have, access to money and resources, that can create a kind of trauma. Again, it's not like violent trauma. It's trauma, like a kind of like, you're missing a connection that we in nature would have had, being a part of a tribe or a part of a group. And I think the trauma of not being a member of a tribe, of a community, it is its own kind of trauma, and it manifests in different ways. And as Sean pointed out, he talked about, maybe his therapist mentioned this, but a lot of the neuroticisms, it could even be, bipolar, depression, anxiety, all this stuff in Western countries, I know in the US, is on the rise, right? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, I mean, it doesn't make sense, that it's on the rise because of, like, now we got all this weird stuff with YouTube and Instagram, people scrolling and looking and feeling left out and all this. Even if you've never experienced any kind of like trauma, like violent trauma, anything like that, there is a kind of collective trauma that the Western, experience creates, just because the type of connections that we naturally want, that we're designed to have, are severed. Now there's, some people are just naturally, I'm it's funny, I make videos and but I'm actually pretty introverted. I mean, you got to be introverted to be fucking around with audio shit for hours and hours on end and talking to yourself in a microphone or on a camera. But yeah, I think boredom is a result of a kind of trauma, and the trauma is, not being a part of something larger than yourself, right? Like the Western cultures are so, they're, America's individualistic to a fault. Like it's a lot of problems come because of how individualistic America is, versus being collective, operating as a collective. And I think a lot, yeah, I could go on and go in different directions and everything, but just speaking directly to the connection between boredom, trolling, and trauma, like people who are engaging in trolling because they have nothing to do, quote unquote, is because they're disconnected from a unit. Or on the other hand, right, like, so you're disconnected, you're bored, you're just going out, like making something happen. On the other end of that too, right, like there's a very, you can feel like it's weird, even if you're alone. I've been here, like I've done this, but you're alone, you're by yourself, you're feeling depressed or whatever, and you can go on somewhere like 4chan, right, or 8chan, or some other chan, or some other website, and you can, even as a lurker, you can get a sense of community and sense of belonging, even just watching, a train wreck manifest, or watching, like you feel like you're a part of something. And in a lot of ways you are, right? Like the whole QAnon thing, that's, I think that kind of stuff is directly related to the kind of trauma that exists from the, kind of like colonialist capitalist existence that, most people in English speaking worlds are in. Like just that existence is traumatic. So it's not the same kind of like, violent trauma, whatever. It's like a trauma, like a disconnected, you're not like connected to something, and that creates its own kind of trauma, which manifests in different ways. Again, boredom, which can lead to trolling and lead to other things, anxiety, depression. Because even when you think of and I'm going to say something here too real quick, just as a side, the science behind, around mental illnesses, a lot of people push this idea of chemical imbalances, but that's like not a real thing. I'll link to like an article or something pointing that out. Like it's a hypothesis someone came up with some time ago, and then everybody ran with it, and then it's in the collective mind where it's like, oh, it's a chemical imbalance, eat these chemicals and we'll balance you. But that's not, in my opinion, where the bulk of these mental health, even me, like my next level bipolarness, I was gonna like throw these books in here real quick, but with my bipolarness, like speak to that, in a indigenous culture, there's like shaman and medicine men and women, and like someone who's just wild like me would get paired up, like, oh, you're I'm not calling myself a shaman, but I'm calling myself a shaman. But the point is that, like even like where was I going? Let me get back. There's no chemical imbalance. That's not the thing. The thing is social imbalance, in that we don't have the connections that we yearn for, that we desire, that we want, and then that manifests in crazy ways. And the lack of these connections has been normalized to the point where, like, like people think it's normal to go to work, come home, watch TV, nothing wrong with these things, but like there's a serious lack of tribalness and connection, and that manifests in crazy ways. I'll just stop there. For some reason though, I did want to pull out this book. What's it called? Ritual, Power, Healing, and Community. And speaking of, I'm looking forward to reading this book. And there's another dude, Robert Bly. I kind of Googled him for a second, but I don't know too much about him. He created like men's groups and stuff. But, something that we're missing in the Western realms is different rituals for a lot of, man, I'll save it for the podcast. But my main point is yes, I still think when you're, if someone's trolling and they haven't experienced any trauma, like the trauma that comes to mind, violence, sexual violence, being in a severe accident, sometimes just witnessing violence, is traumatic. So everyone already associates trauma with those things, but then there's the trauma of not being a part of something, not belonging, not, feeling like there's, something bigger that you're a part of or something bigger that you're working towards that would come naturally in a tribal setting, right? Like you go way back in the, time, and, like your purpose and meaning is just like keeping yourself alive and the members of your tribe alive, right? Like that was all the meaning you needed. Like get more meat, get more food, boom, you got meaning. And as we evolved, that meaning left, and then people came up with other meanings, but then we got like more and more disconnected, and it's this disconnection that is a kind of trauma. That's what I'm saying. This disconnection is a kind of trauma, and it manifests, I think, many ways, trolling being one of them. People want to be a part of something, and I'm actually really excited about, I've always been excited about the internet and community, all this stuff. But what's interesting about the internet is that it has actually, if you go back, let's see, how long have I been on? I mean, I've been on the internet since the internet existed, but like I started messing with community forums in like 2002, right? And community forums felt like pretty communal. That's how I met a bunch of people in Taiwan, was on community forums and everything. And they felt social. They were really social. Like we would go out and meet up, we talk about stuff online, we go meet up offline, and that stuff obviously still is happening. But there's been a serious change from what community forums felt like to what is going on now with like Facebook, Twitter, even YouTube. Even when you look at old YouTube versus current YouTube, and the what happened that kind of poisoned all of this is that companies, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and Netflix, they're all engaged in this, is that they don't make money by helping you create real connections with real people and collaborate and whatever. They make money by serving ads, and they make the most money by serving you as many ads as possible. And they serve you as many ads as possible by keeping you affixed to these to the screen, right? And something about all these companies shifting to their focus being that, like, really poisoned the well in terms of making like real online authentic connections. And I think a big part of it too was the transition, not just from the companies being able to earn money online, but as individuals and as creators being able to earn money online. And I was there I was there when creators were making nothing online. I started making something, but the point being is that also kind of shifted. Don't get me wrong, dude, there's tons of really positive communities, digital communities all over. The internet is a much cooler place than it was back then. But it also has it is also affected, it's a little warped, right? Like people know what you can do on YouTube or on Instagram to get more views, right? Like you can I don't know, throw a sexy lady on, do something crazy. I'm giving away $1,000, like, and people see that and then they copy that as a route to success. And it's not a route to success built on community. It's a route to success built on having as many people as possible look at you. Like that's how Facebook makes money. That's how YouTube makes money. That's how Twitter makes money. I'm really far off topic from what I originally started, but my point being is that's also how creators make money, right? The more people that hear and see them, they're either able to sell those people more things in terms of maybe it's membership, membership thing, maybe it's sponsored things on their podcast, or just being a part of the partner program on YouTube. And I'm mentioning all this because all of this activity is like played a role in like making people feel even more and more disconnected, right? Like back in the day on a community forum, like there were no ads on there. You were just there to talk and hang out and learn. But anyway, let me stop there. I'll go on and on forever. The podcast will be fun because I'll never stop. Can't stop, won't stop. All right, guys, that's it. But yeah, I think trauma. I think this disconnected feeling that people feel all throughout the Western world is a kind of trauma, and trolling is one of the ways it manifests. All right, I'm gonna get out of here. Peace.